Welcome back Behind the Label. Today we have a special guest, the owner of Glenns Creek Distillery, David Meier, and he has been gracious enough to let us use his, what do you call it?
Nice air conditioner.
What do you call this?
The nice air conditioner.
Yeah, it's nice.
We actually call this the QT room, quick tasting.
Ah, okay.
So, you know, we get a number of visitors here who have 20 minutes or so that, you know, want to do something quick, and so this is a nice little intimate spot. We can do that, and they don't want the tour, so they don't really need
so
to
just come straight in.
But you said that John did all the work and you did the painting on the
Well,
ceiling.
yeah, three people pretty much did the work. John did about 2/3. I did about an 1/8, and another guy did whatever the remaining. Right now, we distill 3 bourbons that we have for sale. We have 2 that are in the works. So we'll have 5 bourbons total that we distill. We source a bourbon from MGP, it's quite good. We source a rye from MGP, it's also quite good. Then we have malt whiskey, we have rum, we have a couple specialty spirits. I mean, we just do a lot of different things here. So
that's your primary one though, there.
the OCD's been, you know, that's from day one. We distilled that for about 1.5 years, and then we started thinking about doing some other things. The next thing we actually did was rum, interestingly enough. And then we got the idea for Cafe au lait, and so we started producing that. And of course, you know, I can look at it now and say, well, we distilled that 3-4 years ago, and try to remember, you know, we distill it, put it away, and then wait for a while, and then come back later and decide when to bottle it. So, yeah, we got lots of different things. And then the premiums we only have every now and then. They're kind of a special deal. This is only barrel 3 of that one ever, and we probably won't have another one for 6 months.
So you own it outright?
100%, yeah.
Cool.
So what made you go into it? Because you didn't really have an experience in distilling beforehand.
None, 0. Well, maybe.
You can't discuss that part. Not on camera.
You know, this is the darndest business because, you know, I tell people, I said, you can't learn it on your own. So if you want to be a chef, you can cook at home, you can go to chef school, you can do something. Now you can do distilling classes, you know, there's different places, but when I started it didn't seem to be anything. But it might have started in the garage, you know, just saying.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows, allegedly.
Allegedly.
And it just started kind of as an accident, really. Somebody asked me to build them a still, and I don't know the first thing about a still. I knew absolutely nothing. And
So why would they ask you to build them a still?
oh, this guy is like, oh, I want to make sugar sign, you know, apple pie.
But what background did you have that he thought?
Welding. So that's what I said. I said, so what makes you think I can build a still? He said, you can weld, right? I said, yeah, but I mean, that's, I'd say Yo-Yo Ma should be able to play the tuba because he's a musician. I mean, I don't see the connection. But he kind of persisted, and he showed me some information, and I realized, you know, a pot still is a pretty simple thing. It's a tank, so this bottle represents like a pot still. You have to have a way to fill it, you have to have a way to drain it, and you have to have a way for the steam to come out. And, you know, pretty straightforward device. So I hooked it up for him, and he never used it. So, you know, a couple of years went by, and I didn't think much about it. And finally one day I was at his house, I said, what are you going to do with that? And I don't know. I said, give it back to me. So now I got to saying, like, I don't have the first clue what to do with it. I made it, but I don't know how to use it. And so, you know, I Googled a little and did a little research, and I thought, you know, sugar shine just seems boring. You know, pour some sugar in water, ferment it, you know, whatever. And so I thought, well, maybe I should make bourbon, which it wasn't. If you're doing it in your garage, it's technically not bourbon, but. You know, so I had to do a little research, and you go there and you see the 51% corn rule, and you see all the other criteria, and you go, oh, okay, well, that's pretty straightforward. So I like to experiment, and so I did just hundreds of different experiments, just kind of goofing around, different recipes, different grains, different, you know, all the different things. So that went on for a while, and then guy I knew, he says, "Oh, I know where this cool old distillery's for sale." Cool.
It's not a small place.
No,
You
no.
were in Florida at this
No,
time?
I was here. I
You
moved
moved here,
here.
you moved here, okay.
Yeah. No, I moved to Kentucky in 1980 from Florida.
Oh, okay.
So, but the truth of the matter is, prior to that, I had only had 5 bourbons ever in my life. I mean, people think I must have loved bourbon my
Yeah, that's
whole
kinda what I was
life, that
thinking.
it was a
Yeah.
lifelong dream, that it was, something that was like, no, that's if I look at my past, it's kind of how it happens. I get interested in something, I go, oh, let me try that. And then, I get more interested. And pretty soon my hobbies get out of control and expensive, and this one got the most out of control yet.
Well, you just bought a place that was 30 years old that's been sitting there.
No, abandoned 30 years.
Yeah, abandoned 30 years. It's a lot older than
The
that.
distillery's 1878. The boilers are 1935. This building is 1940s. So it was left unattended for 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I remember driving down through here. I guess I was in med school actually in the 90s or something. This was all just like ivy and all kinds
Oh
of
yeah, it still is.
Yeah, covered in everything.
Yeah, poison ivy. I got some the other day. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's just kind of I'd say like a guy I drove up and I squinted my eyes and said, a little pressure wash and some paint that would clean right up. And a million hours or so later, then you go, oh yeah, it's still got a lot to go. I mean, in hindsight, I think there's an advantage of starting with the ground and building a building designed for a distillery. This was a bottling building, it wasn't a distillery. So it doesn't have some things that are kind of useful in a distillery, like, I don't know, drains, where you can wash things down and clean and so forth. It's got the history, and certainly we're in a prime location here, midway between Buffalo Trace and Woodford, and attract a lot of attention. And it's historic. I mean, the Old Crow Distillery, people know Old Crow, and they ask me still, is Old Crow still made? I say, yeah, Jimmy, there's a product called Old Crow. They own the sign that says Old Crow, and we own the building that says Old Crow.
So how many buildings do you actually use?
This compound, these buildings are all interconnected. There's a shipping building here. This was a bottling facility. The 2 adjacent spaces were bottling facilities. So they're the only ones on the property that still have electricity. And that was the main thing to choose this. There's a great building back here that was the cistern room. That was where they filled barrels, and it's a nice big tall space and kind of cool old.
And is that the building that has the date on the top there?
No, that's the distillery.
Yeah.
The cistern room is the building where this photo was taken. This is inside the building, taking the picture out through the door at that time. So the previous owners in the salvage business, knocked the wall down to get scrap out equipment. So there was equipment inside that building, and so that's a photo taken from the inside. And we thought it was kind of cool because it looks like a bottle.
Yeah.
But it's the yellow building back there. So, but it didn't have electricity. And this is near the gate, and so when you drive up, this is the first thing you see, and if we were back there, it would be a little bit more complicated. It's hard enough for people to find this door, let alone back there. So anyway, that was a choice, and I think there's trade-offs in everything. There's no optimal solution.
What's your plans for like the rest of the property?
Well, I'm really hoping that one of your viewers can rustle up 20 million or so.
Oh, that's easy.
Thinking. 20 million. Anybody out there?
We do a GoFundMe, and we're there next week. Yeah.
To open up the still house.
So, I sat down, and I'm a consultant, and I consult with companies and businesses and talk about these things. So I sat down and did a business plan, like you're supposed to, and I tried to be as thorough as possible. But one thing I always tell my clients about a plan is I said, it's always wrong. The plan is wrong. It's just a matter of how wrong. You're projecting into the future something, and you're trying to anticipate things, of course, which you have no idea just look at the situation we're in right now with COVID. It's like, when are people going to come back, and how many are going to come back? And you don't know. But you can make a plan, and you can say, well, if this is the situation, we'll try this and this and this. So the plan was a 3-phase plan, and it said, first, production, create products, create brands, get it out there. Second, really, my desire is preservation of the buildings. Stop the damage, put roofs on where they need to be put on, keep the water out because that's your biggest enemy, and so on. And then finally, phase 3 was restoration and trying to bring it back to something. Okay, at that time, the only real vision for that I had was what happened at Woodford. I mean, they went through the same thing back in the 90s. It had been abandoned for quite a long time. Brown Foreman came in and brought it to life. And, you see it today, but really that's decades after that. So you got to really look long term. So now we have Castle and Key down the road, and they bought Old Taylor, which was in as bad or worse condition than here, and kind of I followed along with that, and I have a little different vision than what they've done, but to me, I have the vision of a Scottish distillery with copper pot stills, sort of like the Woodford, but maybe more of them, and we've got a big. That building has just a great, big, grand, open space with skylights in the ceiling.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful, and the building was built to last. It's stone and steel and concrete. The place where we've had issues is where there's wood, tar paper roofs and wood, like on the rick houses here. So, if I had my druthers, it's. What we've always said is that we want to respect the legacy of Old Crow. We want to respect the history of it. We don't want to turn it into some glitzy glamour, place, which would be hard to do. I mean, it is an old building and has that old building charm and feel to it. So I can picture that in my mind. And then we've got additional buildings that were like the scale house and what they call the paint shop and the garage, and I can envision some artisan village or something. Maybe you got a pottery shop over there and a wood shop over there.
We walk down.
We actually checked out the spring house. I mean,
And the spring house is cute. The spring house is
Maybe
wonderful.
my favorite place on the property.
It's a beautiful little building.
I like the strut.
Reminds me of Europe.
Yeah, it's very European.
Yeah.
It's a great little structure, and then that green space right around there, you can have events and things. So
we were thinking about that. Yeah, I was like,
This would be a great place to have, like, a band and an event space, and you have the little spring house over there, and
So,
it would be really nice.
I've been well, this just about 6.5 years ago, and so we don't lack ideas. John's an idea guy. I've got plenty of ideas. Other people come, and we've got the fellow who helped with the labels is an architect. So it's not a shortage of ideas. It's a shortage of time and money.
But you do all this by yourself.
Me and John.
You make all this stuff by yourself.
Me and John, and we, between John and myself, we pretty much made everything here. Like I said, another fellow helped with part of this room, but the rest of that out there, it's been John and me.
That's what we were discussing earlier in the episode, kind of plugging you guys and, talking about the experience when you come here as for a tour or something, that you guys are, you're doing very hands-on. It's not like you're sitting in an air-conditioned office.
Well, I am right now.
Well, yeah, right now.
Now that we got the QT
Tell other
room.
people, but you're literally out there, making the whiskey, then you're doing
Sweating,
the tours, and sweating, and
freezing in the winter, sweating in the
yeah.
summer.
So
Yeah.
it's a really great experience.
Both John and myself, I think both of us like making things. I mean, there's a certain satisfaction about when you do something, and at the end of it, you can stand back and see what you've accomplished. One of the, that's one of the drawbacks in the consulting industry. When I started consulting, is you go in and you help someone, and you can see the progress, and you can see that, but it's slow. It's gradual. So for me, my hobbies have always been about making things. I did pottery, I did glass blowing, I did metalworking and woodworking, and so I just enjoy making things, and sometimes I wonder, because it's hard work, you know, and there's easier ways to do this, and there's folks out there, and I don't knock them, that are sensible, create a brand and you know, source the stuff, but you know, but again, I realized long ago that that's what I enjoy, and so I'm not going to complain about the fact that we have to work hard. And
There's only 3 of you.
there's only 3 of us, and you know, Joe, it takes one person to do the operations part during the day. So we switch it up sometimes. Sometimes I have to do part of it. Sometimes John does part of it. Joe usually carries that load during the week. But then, you know, something's always breaking. Something always needs to be repaired. Something, you know, pumps. We go through pumps and we go through equipment, and we have to, you know, so there's that kind of stuff on the side that I have to do. And John does some.
I was telling Will, I said, the nice thing about coming here, like you go to Woodford Reserve, which we love going to in Buffalo Trace, but you get like 3 or 4 products that you do at the tasting.
Right.
And they're all products that you can buy most of the time on the shelf.
Right.
When you come here, you get like this whole line of stuff.
Yeah, we don't get chintzy. We give you a small. we have a small cup, but we do several.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of stuff that you won't find in the liquor store.
Yeah, and I was
you
even
won't.
commenting before, like I know when we were last week, you're like, hey, we don't even sell this yet, and try that, you know, and so you don't get that anywhere else. This is a unique experience.
We don't want everybody to find it. We, no, I mean, we've been fortunate, and I don't know if it's a sensible strategy. We haven't marketed. I got 0 marketing budget. I mean, part of the issue in the beginning was, you know, when I did my business plan, I said, oh, hey, here's how much money for marketing, and here's how much for bathrooms, and here's how much for this. And then when I went to get the loan, they said, here's how much we're actually going to give you. And it was
You gotta make that
considerably
work.
less. And so it's like, okay, well, we'll have to do without that. And bathrooms was, you know, one of those things. And it's like, marketing? Well, never mind. We'll just do social media. People who come and shoot for free. And but I think the benefit of that is, for the most part, people who come here are more interested and interesting, and they really want to understand. They appreciate what we do, and they want to understand it more. And we can take them right up close. I tell the visitors that we don't have tour guides. You know, whoever shows you around, me, John, Joe, Stuart, we do the work. We build the stuff. We can explain it. You have a question you can't get answered somewhere else, we can probably answer it, because we did it, and we're self-taught. Everything that we've done sort of learned through experience and trial and error, and knock on wood, it's worked for the most part.
Oh, it has. I mean, like I said, we brought a group last year. The American Battlefield Trust was in. There's like 30-some people.
Yeah.
We did our Colonel Taylor tour, and of course we visited Buffalo Trace and Castle Key. But the most positive reviews we got were you doing the tour here.
Well, you know, we like to have fun. We cut up. You know, sometimes I joke to people. I said, look, the non-facetious tour is $20. If you want the facetious tour, now that's only $8, right? Which you're going to get some sarcasm, and you're going to get some pokes, and you know. But that we just like to have fun with it, and so you know, if somebody doesn't like bourbon, I'll pick on them a little bit and have some fun.
But you have stuff that's not even bourbon here. So
We do.
What products do you have that, I see the OCD number 5.
These are all the bourbons right here that we have right now. Like I said, we've got 2 more. We're doing a wheat bourbon, and we have 100% corn bourbon. We've been distilling those for almost a year now, so they're still aging. We just released a malt whiskey, so that's 100% malted barley.
So that would basically be Scotch.
It would if we were in
If you were in
Scotland.
Scotland, yeah.
If we're in Scotland, it would be Scotland. Scotty, bring me up. We do the Kentucky Prohibition rum. We distill that here. Something a little different. People are surprised sometimes.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that
Kentucky and see a rum like, oh, you're
Now,
rum.
do you use like locally, is it sugar cane?
No,
Do you get that
it's
in?
molasses, and it's shipped up from the south. Unfortunately, molasses is the most expensive way to ship, something up, but
It seems a little heavy.
it is. It's heavy, and the shipping is
So
expensive.
you age it in your old bourbon barrels?
We do, and that's aged in a used bourbon barrel. And we've got these confuse people because this is referred to as a specialty spirit, distilled spirit specialty. And the reason is we use part grain and part sugar on that one, and it's kind of a hybrid. And there's a little idea that we can, when you distill sugar, I learned later after my Sugar Shine friend, when you ferment sugar, you don't get any flavor from the distillate. It's pretty neutral, right? So you put a little grain in there, you put some sugar in there, you get a little grain flavor, and then in this case we use that chocolate barley that's in our cafe au lait, and you can make that flavor more pronounced. So by backing off on the graininess, right? So we give the yeast sugar to make alcohol, and then we back off on the graininess and make the flavor pronounced. And then the Hamilton smoke, we do the same thing, except we use the peated barley, which is a smoked barley, which is the same that we use in our malt whiskey to give it a smoky flavor. So these are specialty spirits, which, your brain says, what does that mean? And that's why you have to taste it to understand.
But you're using peat just like they do in Scotland.
This is a peat smoke,
Yeah.
but it's not a whiskey because it's got sugar in it. This one is actually a whiskey. It is. It's 100% grain. These are part sugar, part grain. So that was kind of an experiment based on an idea that John had. He thought if we use sugar, then our cost would be less because you don't have to cook sugar, so you have to cook grain. Well, the trouble is, it turns out that pound for pound sugar costs more than grains, and so it's offset. But Hamilton's on the $10 bill, so he thought we could make a bottle and sell it for $10. That's how we got the name Hamilton. And then I gave John a little history lesson. I said, Hamilton was the first Secretary of the Treasury. He established the United States Treasury, in fact. And he's the guy who told George, hey, George, you know what, we're broke. That Revolutionary War thing was expensive.
Just put a little tax on it.
Let's tax whiskey.
Yeah, whiskey's a good thing. Let's tax that.
So we didn't put Hamilton on here out of respect. We put his face on there more of a
dig.
Yeah. Hey, dude, we don't like you, but and legend has it. I don't know if all this is true. I saw the play, by the way, recently in New York.
I did too.
And it was pretty good. Yeah. The play's great. I don't know about Hamilton himself, but he theoretically was kind of pro big business. Jefferson was kind of pro small business, and so we think that being a small distillery with his face on there would be upsetting to him. But hey, maybe if he was alive today, he'd be a little more,
A little chill.
But that's the thing, like I said, you go to the big distilleries, you might get those three, and that's all you're going to taste, but you have all these other ones.
And I just think, that perplexes me sometimes, is why people clamor to go there and sample the stuff they can buy anywhere. And, so I tell people, I said, you're not going to go somewhere and they're not going to pour you their best bourbon. You come here, if I have a premium for sale, I'm going to pour you a sip.
So what went all into this one? I mean, this is your premium.
The story on the back of the label, and it's one of those things that's hard to. It's not hard to explain, but because we've learned on our own, I think we've had some what I call happy accidents, serendipitous discoveries, and so when we got ready to bottle the very first OCD some years ago, the question is, what the heck? How are we going to get this 500-some pound barrel empty and processed through a filter to get the char out and into a bottle? So the bottling machine has suction, but only from a tank. It won't pull it from a barrel and through a filter and everything. So we were coming up like guys do with all these kind of crazy ideas and lifting barrels up, and and you've been out. We don't have a whole lot of space, and the bottling line's pretty small. And actually, it was John's dad came in, and he looked at it for about 2 seconds, and he says, why don't you just pressurize the barrel and push the alcohol out? And I thought, well, that's rather brilliant. So we got a oilless compressor, and I rigged up something that would get hooked in the bunghole with a pickup tube that would go down in the barrel, and we pressurize the barrel, and the alcohol goes out to the tube. Pretty simple. But what I found out right away is there's a lot of char down in that barrel, and it clogs up the filters a lot, and it's a pain in the neck to change the filters. And so we said, hey, you know what? Next time, let's roll the barrel over there the day before, let the char settle out in there, all that dust and so forth. And then let's not put the tube all the way down into that so that we're not sucking all that up, right? So the result was there's a little bit left in the bottom of the barrel. And being, if I go back to my garage days, one of my secrets was I just pour it through a coffee filter to get the chunks out of it, and then maybe drink it myself. So I thought, well, I'm not going to waste that stuff, So I poured it out, and as I was pouring it out, I thought, man, that just smells awesome. Yeah. And so I tasted it, and I thought, God, I just stood there all day bottling this stuff, and it smells better for some reason, and I still to this day don't understand why, other than maybe it's just the char. I mean, it's literally, when you pour it out, it's like sludge. It's just lots and lots of char. So I don't like to take just my own opinion, so I gave a sample to John. I said, you try this. And he says, that's really good. What is that? And I said, that's that sludge I poured out of the barrel yesterday.
Sludge number 5.
And all I had to, then I say something, then he has the idea, well, we should make that. I said, well, the trouble is we don't make it. It's the leftovers. It's the dregs. It's the bottom of the barrel. So he said, well, maybe if we pour that back into a barrel, and we every time we bottle, we just keep pouring that remainder back in there. And so we did. We filled up that barrel, and then we put it back on the rack for another year or so.
So how many barrels would it take to
That's what I was wondering.
It's somewhere between 15 and 20. We've bottled 57 barrels of OCD so far, and we have this is barrel 3, and I have 2 more over there, so that'd be 5. So.
And we've tried this.
Yeah, this is good
It's
stuff.
good.
Yeah,
This
is good.
This is just a little bit older than your regular OCD.
It is, so it's a little bit older. Nowadays, it's getting, and when people ask me how old it is, I say, well, see, the trouble is, that's 6 months worth of production.
So you're constantly adding to
right? It's 6 months. It's 6 months worth of barrels that get added up in there, and so the minimum age in this right now is 4. I know that much, but it's between 4 and 4.5-ish. But then we put it back. So the barrels that we emptied were 4 years old, but now we put that back for even longer time. So, and of course the rule says as long as it's 4 years old, you don't need an age statement. So this label still has an age statement because I bought a bunch of labels and we're still using them. We're cheap around here, man. We don't waste anything. And so I try to tell people, I said, look, you come in here and taste it, you like it, you don't care what the label says in terms of age. Age is mostly irrelevant. It's taste. We don't bottle any of it based on age, we bottle based on taste. And we ask visitors sometimes, when I pull samples from a barrel, to say, give me your feedback to see whether you like it or not, because if enough people like it, then it's worth bottling.
And they don't normally do that at a normal distillery.
Yeah, you might not. Maybe not supposed to. Well, that's the advantage of being smaller and more intimate. People come in here a few at a time. We're not getting thousands of people passing through, and so it doesn't happen all the time. It's rare. And it's not like I give out gallons of it or something. It's just trying to see, because I think one of the things that worries me, concerns me a bit, is, when I taste it, I'm like, well, I like that, but it's, I'm not an expert. I haven't been drinking bourbon and I don't have 40 years of experience or something. Like I said, 10 years ago I tried 5 bourbons. I've tried quite a bit more now, but market research.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you do. You have to see what's out there and kind of see where it fits. And so,
Well, that brings up a question. When you let's say you go out and try someone else's product, and you say, "Oh, I really like that." Do you try to emulate that in yours? Do you tweak anything or?
No. So when I started, and this was 2015 when we started distilling here. I thought, well, okay, we're going to do single barrel strength. This is single barrel strength. This is actually multiple barrels with barrel strength. Okay,
That's about
small batch.
117 proof at that.
Yeah, 117. A small batch technically. The remains of many barrels. Okay, so I went out and I thought, well, let me try to find other products just to see what's out there. And you could find a single barrel product but not a barrel strength, or you could find a barrel strength but not a single barrel. Nowadays there's some options, but 5 years ago I just really couldn't find anything. And I wasn't getting something to try to copy it. I was just trying to see where did we kind of fit in that, and just curious to see what else was out there and where we might fit.
Because barrel strength is something that actually kind of new in it the last few years.
Relatively, yeah. In the last,
People like.
Because before that, it was all 80 proof, 90 proof.
Yeah, and it's, I think there's been a tremendous shift in the industry. I think it's good all the way around. 20, 30 years ago, if you went in the store, that's why I'd only tried 5 bourbons, because there was only about 5, right? Everybody had one. There was one Maker's Mark, there was one Jim Beam, there was one Heaven Ale, and so now you go and there's just a whole variety of things from A to Z, and that's a good thing. I think that's good for everyone. This was a recipe I sort of concocted, in the garage after several experiments. But look, I was explaining this to somebody earlier, and I said, look, because everybody asks about the mash bill, and I said, let me explain something to you. So bourbon, we know, has a minimum 51% corn, okay? But here's the economic side of it. Corn as a grain is half the price of your next grain, which is wheat or rye. And it's a fourth the price of barley malt, okay? Now, if you're thinking about it, first of all, the price of corn is less, the taste is good, and you get more fermentable sugars, which means more alcohol per pound. So, wouldn't you think that you would have a relatively high percentage of corn?
Which sure is.
And the answer is all the big distilleries have 70-some plus or minus percent corn. Okay? Now on the other side of the scale, you need barley for the enzyme action to break starches down into fermentable sugars. And you need a minimum of 5% and a maximum of 10. Most go with about 10 because they want complete conversion, and it's safer to have 10% to get complete conversion of starch into fermentable sugar. So here you got this corn over here where you're probably going to have 70+%, and you got barley over here at 10. So what do you have in the middle?
Rye or wheat.
Rye or wheat. Yeah. Right? So this one, Old Crow, it was a 70-20-10. I mean, it's a pretty standard sort of recipe. But I explain to people what I learned by doing it many experiments is if you go from 8% rye to 10% rye, you'll never really notice a difference. Okay? If you go from 8% to 20%, there's a distinct difference. Okay? So, this cafe au lait, we use that chocolate barley instead of standard distiller's barley. It's got a heavily roasted flavor, so it doesn't take much to make a big difference. So depending on what you're working with, you can make a distinct flavor. And one thing that's different about us from the big distilleries typically have 1, maybe 2 mash bills. Every single product we have is a different mash bill. completely different from ground up, okay? This is 70-20-10. These two share the same proportions of grain, but this uses chocolate barley, this is used standard distiller's barley. We're doing 100% corn, okay? We're doing a wheated bourbon that's the same proportions as our OCD. So, you know, whereas other big distilleries create a new brand by mixing certain barrels or picking 12-year-old barrels for this one or a single barrel over here. They've got, you know, they got a million barrels to go pick from and say, you know what, I can take this.
But all those mash bills are the same.
But the mash bill's the same.
Whereas yours, all the mash bills are different. So your whiskeys are actually completely different.
They are. They're
different products.
different from the ground up. Now we use the same yeast, we use the same stills. You know, our aging process is similar. So our difference is from the beginning, and then because they're single barrel, we don't mix and match and do things like that.
So you're
we could, and we have for certain people done that, but typically it's one barrel at a time.
So yours is all about the mash bill. We're like Buffalo Trace, it's about the placement in the warehouse.
There's placement, and we get some of that too. I mean, we don't have as much variation in the placement, but we've noticed that certain places tend to do a little bit different. I mean, barrels are different. The wood trees that it came from, I mean, there's so many variables that affect the final outcome that to think you're somehow controlling those variables is really kind of crazy. I estimate, tell people that probably 1 billion variables when you look at possibilities.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not kidding. I mean, when you just start with the grains. The only limitation on bourbon is 100% grain and 51% corn, right? Other than that, you've got a lot to play with. And there's quinoa, and there's rice, and there's oats, and there's wheat, and there's all these other sorghum is a grain. And so, there's plenty of possibilities. And then there's 100,000 identified species of yeast on the planet. So, if I got 100,000 options here times 100,000 here, I'm already up in a big number. And then you got distillation, which there's unlimited ways to distill and techniques and how you make the cuts and all these other things. And then you've got the barrel itself and the variables in the barrel and where the wood came from and how was the wood dried and how long was it dried before it was turned into a barrel and on and on and on and on. And then you've got aging and post-aging and what you do when it comes out of the barrel. You cut it, mix it, blend it, whatever. So when you think about all those options, it's really limitless. And that's one thing I like. And so we try to tell people, I said, look, there's so many variables that we have no control over. Don't even pretend like you have control over them. You don't. Some people want to say, oh, well, we grow our own grain. Okay. But you don't have control over the weather while it's growing. You have to store it. You have to control conditions during storage. And there's just a lot of things. And so I realized early on, don't kill yourself trying to make them all taste the same. Try to make them all taste good. So the goal is simple. Just try to make them all taste good. And, the most interesting thing to me, I think, when we do that, so if I pull samples from 4 barrels and we're trying to decide which one of those should we put in a bottle, the first question is, are any of them good enough to go into a bottle? Not which one do we like best, but which one of those should be OCD, okay? And usually it's kind of interesting. Usually John and I have a similar palate and we'll probably pick the same one. Joe tastes it, he'll pick a different one. And if we let visitors taste it, we'll get split decision. And that's a good thing. So if I have 4 samples, and usually if I pull 4 samples from 4 different barrels, one of them, kind of clearly isn't ready, and we go, okay, that's easy, we can win it. Now we got these 3, and it's a split decision, it's a toss-up. And one visitor one day, the best answer he said, look, if I bought any, and assume these are all OCD, he said, if I bought any of those 3, I'd be happy. He said, I like this one better, but sorry.
That's all right.
That's my, you gotta go do some work timer.
Yeah, I know. we gotta let you get back to work.
Yep.
Well, no, I just have to go check the stills and change the jug. They're running tails right now, which is the easy part, but you have to change out the jugs. So that's the reality, you know. And right now we have, for example, some barrel 56 and some 57. And so if I let people try both, you know, part of those people say, oh, I really like 56, and part of them say, I really like 57. They're a little different, they're not the same, but they're both good. And that's really the goal. And as long as none of them taste horrible, we're happy with that. And you know, people, I've had people come in. One young lady came in one day. It was really kind of funny. She says, do you have any of that barrel 19 anymore? I said, I'm sorry, we're on barrel 28. 19's long gone. It's long gone. She about got a tear in her eyes. She was like, oh God, it was so good. I really love 19. I said, well, you know what? Hold on a minute. We have to keep samples when we bottle. You know, we have to keep some samples. And coincidentally, I'd been packing those up and storing them, and I had realized we had 3 bottles of 19. We have to keep 2. And I just recalled it, and I said, hey, wait a minute. So I went back around and I grabbed her a bottle, and you'd have thought I'd given her a pot of gold, man. She was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it, I got no better. So I'm trying to tell people, I said, look, if you really love that one, you better buy it, because the next, that's the last one.
Yeah. And I actually like that about that, because that is, I mean, there's some magic in that. You know, it's a very limited supply. I really like this, and that's it. That's the only one in the world.
It's not limited on purpose. It's just a single barrel, and it means one barrel, and that's barrel 56. And when we sell out of 56, we go to 57.
That's the cool thing though, when people come here, they're trying all this stuff, and they're meeting you, and you don't do that at a normal tour. You're not getting that at Buffalo Trace.
Well, you won't get that for long here, because, you know, with all this attention you're giving me, I'm going to be too,
You're swamped.
I'll be too important.
John will be doing it.
John will be doing
He's going to try to figure out how to spend that $20 million.
Yeah.
We'll let Joe do it.
So,
Now, do you have any of the old stuff from your alleged garage days? Is it like in a back barrel somewhere that's just sitting there?
You know, here's the thing.
And if you do, is it any good?
It is really good. It is good, as a matter of fact. You know, here's the thing I learned. Here's the thing I learned in my garage. I've never been a big drinker. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I didn't party, and I went to Berea College in Dry County, and I was fine with that. So like I said, I tried 5, literally, I mean, I'm not kidding, tried 5 bourbons in my life. The only rum I'd ever had was in a pina colada or something. I had never tasted rye whiskey. I didn't even know what rye whiskey was. My interest in Scotch at that time, I tried a couple times and I thought it was horrible. So I was really, really, really green. And so, you know, when you have a still and you can produce 1.5 gallons of distillate in a run, which is a 15-gallon still, you can make more than you can drink.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was I had samples all over the place. It was just a big laboratory. It really was. And you know, a lot of people think incorrectly, I just want to clarify this, home distillation is totally illegal, regardless. Not if you sell it. It doesn't matter if you don't sell it, you can't distill a single drop. In the United States, the law says you as an American citizen can own a still, you can't use it. You can't have a still near fermented liquid. You can't have a still hooked up to a heat source. If you get caught, it's serious punishment.
If they come in and it's just sitting there in your living room, away from everything.
Yeah, like the one out in the lobby, the one I bought because it's historic, handmade from probably Prohibition days. If you had that on your mantle, it's fine. If you had it in your garage with a propane burner under it, you're in trouble. So, you know, I'm not an outlaw. I wasn't doing it because of that. It was just, as I said, I like making things, and it seemed intriguing. And I'd never fermented a thing. I'd never distilled a thing. I'd never done any of it. And but I like like to learn new things, I like to try things, and so, and experiment. So I had cabinets of all these experiments with notes and things on them about what went into it, and I tried all different kinds of yeasts. I tried, wine yeast and beer yeast and all these things, and I had when I started a legitimate business, then met some experts in the field who started telling me things like, you can't do this. How? Been doing that my career. Seems to work.
Oddly enough,
Oddly enough, that's what I've been doing, and it seems to work just fine. Or you have to do this, and I'm like, hadn't been doing that, but it seems to work fine. And so I learned that there's just all these. Let's take small barrels as an example. Everyone in this industry is going to tell you that you need a 53-gallon barrel to make good whiskey. That's what everybody's going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you that's wrong. Okay? Not everybody's going to tell you, because a lot of craft distillers are using small barrels. Back in the day, people don't understand. Most distilleries like this one had a cooperage. They made their own barrels, and everybody had a different size. They didn't have a standard. 53-gallon standard is relatively new. Okay, they used to make 48-gallon barrels here, right? So they had to modify the rick houses when they went to 53s, because 53s wouldn't fit. So they had to do some cutting. So the fact of the matter is, you can't treat a small barrel like a 53. You can't leave it for the same amount of time. You can't do this. It ages faster. That is true. We've used 23-gallon barrels. We've used 10s and 5s. Economically, they don't make sense. I was paying more than double for a 25-gallon barrel than I pay for a 53, because nobody makes the small ones, right? Everybody's making the big ones. So economically, it just doesn't make sense. It didn't make better whiskey, bourbon, but it didn't make worse. It was fine. We used 25s, several of them. You can't make good whiskey fast. I said, well, what's fast? Well, if it's not 4 years old. 4 years old is an arbitrary number that came to pass with Bottle and Bond, and that was to protect the industry from outsiders. If you have to age your product 4 years before you can sell it, you got to have a lot of money to start this business. But there's no minimum age for bourbon. There is no minimum age for bourbon. So the question is, when does it taste good? And so people are like, well, you can't do it fast. So, that's some stuff 3 months old, tastes pretty good.
Tastes pretty good, yeah.
Right? And I'm not the one deciding. I'm letting people try it, and they're telling me it tastes pretty good. So there's all these myths and disbeliefs, and people keep passing them around. And it's like, you know what? Here's the reality. Here's the trouble people have. They go somewhere, some craft distillery somewhere, and they try the bourbon, and it's 2 years old, and it doesn't taste good. And they're using small barrels, and so they say, well, small barrels don't work, or 2 years isn't old enough. And that's not the case. That's not the reality. Just because you experienced that and that was the situation doesn't mean that's the rule. Okay? And so I had a number of people, deep in this industry tell me, no, small barrels don't work. Well, that's weird, because I've been using some small ones and they seem to be fine.
Hartfield and Company, Limestone Brands, they all use the small barrel.
Yeah, they're just expensive. They cost more.
What's the advantage of just the faster aging? Is it
Well, if you look at the surface area of wood to the ratio of liquid, you get more contact with the wood. So we said, you know what? If you take a barrel and you think about a barrel sitting on a rack, and that barrel is evaporating angel share, you got a good portion of the wood that after a bit of time isn't touching alcohol anymore. But you know what? We put a silicone bung in with a strap on it. I can turn that barrel upside down. See? And there's more ways to think about this. But if I'm making 1,000 barrels a day, I'll be damned if I'm going to go in the warehouse and roll them over. But when you make a barrel every other day, you can do different things.
So you're taking kind of your experiments from your home days,
Maybe.
and
Allegedly.
applying it to a larger scale now.
Well, yeah, and then we've experimented and tried things along the way. I mean, that's what we can do. The advantage of being small is you're flexible. The disadvantage of being large is you can't be flexible, but you can be efficient. We're much less efficient, are still energy consumption and all kinds of things, the big stills are just way more efficient, you know?
Yeah, as you grow, and I'm sure you have plans to expand, as you get bigger, are you going to try to continue to incorporate innovations like that, and experimentation, or do you think you will then be overwhelmed with,
Well,
there's no one hell we can keep
You
this
know,
up?
I spent 10 years at Toyota, and there's a concept at Toyota called Kaizen, or continuous improvement, and so we try to use that concept here. I think most people do in life. You know, you want to make things better, but to your question, you know, there's trade-offs in everything, and that's what I try to tell people. Is that the pot still is much less efficient, but it produces a different flavor profile. Ethanol's the same. Ethanol's ethanol, it's a molecule, but the other things that come through the still that give flavor are different with a pot still than they are a continuous still. And that doesn't make one better than the other, it just makes them different. Continuous still is hugely more efficient. You can produce a lot more product, but the flavor profile tends to be a little bit more narrow, right, in the way it operates. And so if you're distilling on a continuous still and your output is at 140 proof and you have to cut it to 125 to go into a barrel, you start with less flavor, you add water to it, and you have even less flavor. You have to spend more time in a barrel to get a flavorful product. You start with a flavorful white dog that tastes really nice and is pleasant. You put that in a barrel, it doesn't take as long. You leave it at barrel strength. You don't cut it with water afterwards. You don't have to have it in the barrel as long. It's simple. You know, if I'm going to add, if I put it in a barrel at 125 and I put it in a bottle at 80, you have to add a significant amount of water to that product, which is going to cut it. So we say, look, you can add water to this if you like it that way. I was drinking mine on the rocks because I like it that way. But if you start with an 80 proof product, you can't make it 120. If you start at 120, you can make it 80. You can adjust it to your liking. So those are the variables that people need to understand to say the age is less significant than those other variables. We don't put water in it after it comes out of the still. We don't put water in it when it goes into a bottle, with the exception of this one. This one is a recreational Old Crow, so we did something different with it. But our other products, it's out of the still and into the barrel. That's the way the stills are designed to produce the aggregate average of the run is right about 120 proof. We can go straight in a barrel.
Well, thank you. I mean, like I said, just getting to come out and try all these products and getting to meet you. You don't do that on a normal tour. So that's why we like bringing people out here. We love coming out here.
Well, we
thank
like
you for
making
having us.
it, so we like talking about it. I mean, John too. I mean, we're proud of that. John just built a new still. We just launched it during the COVID pandemic thing, and we named it America. I mean, America. But no, I mean that. You know, when you, I tell you that, you know, when I built that first still and the first time you run it and some drops come out of it, it's like an exciting time because it's like, oh, it worked. And so that's kind of how we feel about it. Is we look at it and go, oh, you know what? We used to have a cooker and we could cook 100 gallons at a time. And we said, you know what? We need a bigger cooker. So here, we create a plan and we spend time and build it. Then it's okay. Well, we need to make this still bigger so we have more capacity, or there's always some constraint in the process that limits your capacity, and everybody else faces the same thing. And you know, it's either cooking, it's fermenting, or it's distilling, or it's aging. How much aging storage space do you have? So there's always some limitation in that process that you have to deal with. So yeah, we'll continue innovating and trying new things. Deliberate. I know some people, you know, are frustrated by allocations and things like that. We don't limit the supply on purpose. We limit it because that's all we can make. And when you're making 5 different bourbons, we rotate through those bourbons on a weekly basis, and we're distilling them, but then they have to age, and it takes time. So the Cafe au Lait was in limited supply. This is the very first barrel of Cuervita Vivo. We've got more now in the pipeline, and so at some point we'll be able to put that into starting distribution in Kentucky, for example, and then expanding from there. So, you know, that's the plan anyway, and we have to remember what we said about a plan.
But the best bet
always
is actually to come here.
It is, yeah, we love it when people come here, we get to talk about it, you get to try it, and I think, for me personally, one of the things I thought about, struggled with in the beginning was, at a $60 price point of a bourbon in a store, if I haven't tasted it, I'm a little skeptical, because I have purchased products from unknown places or places that I've not had and been somewhat disappointed sometimes. So people come here, if they appreciate it, enjoy it, they're willing to buy it, and it's helpful to get a taste in your mouth, right? If you like it, great. If you don't, try something else, and sometimes people don't find.
For me, coming here would be one of the draws to buying it would be just like what we're doing right now, the discussion, the history, the interaction.
Yeah.
Because when I'm drinking this, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know how they made this. That's kind of for me, that's an interest point. That's worth my entertainment.
You get to see it up close. You get to see the whole process, cooking it, fermenting it, distilling it. You get to pour some in a barrel and make bourbon. That's something that we do that's a little unique. So yeah, if people are interested in something different, we get a number of people who come in and go, oh, we've been on all the tours, we don't want a tour. So, well, you're not going to get that tour here.
That's good, because we don't do that here.
Yeah, and just it won't take long, but we'll show you, and if you have an interest, we can explain things. Because, frankly, after you've heard the regular routine once or twice or 10 times, so that we're getting a lot of that kind of visitor now. People that say, hey, we've done the whole thing, we've been to all the distilleries, now we want to try something different and look for the smaller ones and so on. And that's where we come in. There's lots of great distilleries. We tell them there's plenty of nice places to go. You can go to Buffalo and Woodford and Wild Turkey and Four Roses, and it's great. Go over to Wild Turkey and get lucky and see Jimmy Russell, and he'll sign a bottle for you, and he's a great guy.
But you get that experience, and then you can work this experience.
We're different. We're different, and
into
there's
that day.
Not better or worse, different, right? And that's what we say. We're a little different, a lot better. That's our tag.
So they get to see large scale at those places, and you come here and you get to see small scale. So I mean, that's it's the cool thing about coming here is you get to see a small scale, way of making bourbon. You're not seeing a big.
Let's talk to me or John.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. I was saying, that's good. You're actually talking to the guy that's actually owns the place, makes the bourbon, and serves it to you.
If you come on the weekend, you get a 7-footer.
Yeah. One thing we realized here is that I'm short. Everybody else is gigantic, so.
It wasn't on purpose.
Yeah.
It's a coincidence.
So, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. My
We
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank you.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for the information.
Open my